saying that Donald Trump is showing signs of narcissism, which, by the way, one of the symptoms is preoccupied with the fantasies of unlimited power, success, and brilliance. And they're questioning that he has narcissistic disorder. Number one, do you think that's a mental illness, narcissism? And if so, is he fit to be president?
If you take out everybody that has any of those characteristics, then you're going to take out a lot of people, including...
One of the most intense debates we've ever seen on The View took place between Dr. Phil and Joy Behar on live air. The topic, Donald Trump and accusations of narcissism. Joy brought blistering criticism and bold claims, but the panel was shocked by Dr. Phil's expertise and sobering reality check. Dr. Phil exposes double standards, challenges media prejudice, and even forces the panel to consider their own behavior in this contention. Get ready, this argument is not one you want to miss.
That's right.
No, she's gonna ask you this question.
Yeah, I'm
She's
not
been
answering
burning.
because though they can't diagnose anybody, from afar, somebody they haven't examined, doctors, therapists, a lot of respected psychologists out there, really big-time, big names, are saying Donald Trump is showing signs of narcissism, which, by the way, one of the symptoms is preoccupied with the fantasies of unlimited power, success, and brilliance. And they're questioning that he has narcissistic disorder. Number one, do you think that's a mental illness, narcissism? And if so, is he fit to be president?
By drawing attention to specialist claims that Donald Trump exhibits glaring signs of narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, Joy Behar ignited a contentious debate on The View. By using expert judgments, Behar highlighted traits such as an exaggerated sense of self-importance, a fixation with fantasies of power and genius, and an insatiable desire for admiration. She posed an interesting question while concentrating on these attributes. Does Trump's behavior fulfill the clinical criteria of NPD? And if so, does it render him unable to serve as president? Since Behar's accusations went beyond politics and into the psychological sphere, her harsh criticism elevated the debate's stakes and created the conditions for a dramatic showdown. Phil responded to Behar's passionate critique with a cool, collected, professional opinion. He used his expertise to explain that many prominent leaders may display narcissistic traits, particularly while juggling the demanding responsibilities of public office. These behaviors might not necessarily point to a diagnosable mental disease. Citing the DSM-5, the Definitive Guide for Mental Health Diagnoses, Phil stated that NPD is a specific condition with strict diagnostic criteria that cannot be casually assigned to members of the public based on cursory observations. He cautioned about the dangers of establishing diagnoses from a distance, characterizing it as both speculative and biased, and advised the panel to consider the complexities of leadership and mental health before making hasty decisions. This thoughtful response softened a contentious topic and guided the conversation toward greater understanding.
It's a compound question, and I object. But, people talk about narcissism, but they don't really know what it means. So I brought a list from the DSM-5 about what narcissism really is, because if I asked people to stand up and define it, they wouldn't know.
All right.
And let's just take a vote. One, has a grandiose sense of self-importance.
Check.
Check. Okay.
Next.
Two, is preoccupied with fantasies of success, power, or brilliance, which you said. Check. Okay. Three, believes that he or she is special or unique.
Check.
Can only be understood by special people. Four, requires excessive admiration.
Oh, check.
Has a sense of entitlement, which means is very thin-skinned. If you're
Check.
Is interpersonally exploitive.
The panel's selective usage of the term narcissism drew harsh criticism from Dr. Phil, who charged Joy Behar and her colleagues with letting their personal biases affect their judgment. Given that other political figures, such as President Biden, could also possess notable personality or cognitive traits, he questioned why they weren't given the same amount of attention as Donald Trump. According to Dr. Phil, the panel's focus on Trump alone exposed Pauline, and his criticism was a clear reminder of the dangers of media bias, which gives viewers a distorted and insufficient understanding of the issues at hand. because ideological inclinations usually take precedence over objectivity.
Well, that is a lot of people, and if you take out everybody that has any of those characteristics, then you're going to take out a lot of people, including some...
You wouldn't look at President Obama and say he has narcissistic disorder, so you can't just say they all have it. Some people have all the things you said.
Right.
We just checked every one of them.
I said most leaders are under a lot of stress and pressure.
Yeah.
So a lot of them will show anxiety, depression at different times. A lot of leaders will have some affliction at different times because of the pressure and demand.
The conversation took a fresh turn when Dr. Phil reframed it around narcissistic leadership traits. He emphasized that individuals in demanding leadership roles often require traits like self-assurance, a dominant manner, and a heightened sense of self-importance. According to him, personalities might be misconstrued for narcissism, even when they are not by nature, especially when public persons are being closely watched. Phil noted that these traits can often be exacerbated by stress and the overwhelming demands of leadership, leading to behaviors that may resemble narcissism. He advanced a more nuanced understanding of how personality traits manifest under pressure and shifted focus from partisan criticism to the universal challenges of leadership by broadening the discussion. Dr. Phil boldly asked the panel to consider their own behavior, suggesting that some of the traits they criticized in Donald Trump may also apply to them. He pointed to traits like entitlement and the craving for adoration that are commonly seen in public figures and media superstars as potential mirror images of the behaviors they condemned. As the panel reflected on the notion that their criticism of Trump sprang from the same human characteristics they were willing to attribute to him, there was a discernible tension in the room. By presenting this symbolic mirror, Dr. Phil forced the conversation to focus on the broader issue of how these traits are often not specific to any one individual, but rather are a product of public life and the human condition. Furthermore, given how he has been treated in our country, he would take his money and tell us all to screw ourselves if he were self-centered. The man was shot. Please don't call me selfish.
Trump. Let me tell you something about Donald Trump. Donald Trump was one of the most generous people you'll ever meet. He does all kinds of things that people have no idea about. And by the way, if he were selfish, he'd take his money and tell all of us to go F ourselves based upon the way this country has treated him. This guy got shot.
About him
Don't tell me he's
Joy Behar's critiques by highlighting aspects of Trump's character that she said are routinely ignored or intentionally distorted. Citing Trump's numerous charitable projects and private deeds of kindness, Pirro emphasized that these activities usually happen in the background, without the media attention or visibility that individuals like the Obamas receive. She claimed that although the Obamas had constructed a public image of giving, Trump's charity has been overshadowed by persistently negative portrayals in the mainstream media. The skewed narrative, which further divides public opinion and undermines any objective assessment of Trump's character, Pirro said, is an example of how Trump's actions are reframed to fit a predetermined narrative that his detractors have developed. The discussion brought to light the growing divides in political discourse, where opinions of well-known individuals, such as Trump, differ significantly depending on one's political allegiance. Critics usually perceive selfishness and self-interest, while supporters emphasize leadership qualities and hidden generosity. Dr. Phil's call for unbiased analysis served as an important reminder of how important it is to separate judgment from bias, particularly when discussing mental health. He advocated for a methodical, well-rounded approach and counseled panelists and viewers to resist the temptation to generate opinions based on incomplete or biased data. By the end, the underlying message of the discussion was clear. Viewers must consider their biases against Trump, as well as how political myths and the media shape their perceptions of public figures. What are your thoughts on today's video? Tell us in the space provided for comments.